As I was thinking about some of the comments that I've been hearing, and I've spent the last few years really working a lot on the residue of a broken system and seeing all the pain that it's caused, it occurred to me that we are really living in an era of fear. That the defining word of the post-9/11 world is fear. And you see it manifested in all sorts of ways in American society, from concern about Muslims and Islamophobia to stand and frisk laws in New York, to stand your ground laws, to the fallout over the Zimmerman verdict and the Trayvon Martin situation in Florida. We are living in an era of fear, and that fear has bubbled up in this immigration debate, and has become the way that people defend or support the way we've dealt with immigration is always rooted in fear. Numbers USA, who is a big think tank to support anti-immigrant ideas, roots almost every argument in fear. I'm reminded of the story from the book of Exodus, when Pharaoh in Exodus 1 looks around and sees all of a sudden all these Hebrew people and becomes concerned that they're growing too many in number, and begins to use fear of the Hebrew to justify brutal enslavement. We heard just a testimony of the story of how fear was used in Nazi Germany to not only enslave, but to murder and slaughter millions of people created in the image of God. Fear is powerful, and it's visceral, and it's something that all too often defines our politics. And let me say this. Fear right now is defining reality in Washington, D.C., and fear is getting in the way of justice when it comes to undocumented immigrants, and those 11 million. Fear of a so-called base, fear of Rush Limbaugh, fear of Sean Hannity, fear of Glenn Beck. And you can start filling in those names over and over again. Fear is preventing us from doing what is right and just when it comes to immigration. In Exodus chapter 3, there's this text, sometimes I read the Message version, which kind of breaks things down, gives you a different angle, Eugene Peterson's translation or paraphrase. And he says in chapter 3, which is the call of Moses, that God, quote, knew all about their pain. God knew all about their pain, the pain of the Hebrew people. And so I submit that the reason I'm here and the reason I'm going to continue to be here is because I believe God knows all about the pain of the 11 million undocumented. God knows all about the pain of the little girl who cries herself to sleep every night because she hasn't been able to see her mom for the last year, as her mom is in detention facing deportation. Or a mother who is grieving the fact she may never get to see her son again because her son has been deported. God knows all about their pain. And I believe God is calling us to show up at this moment. There is a really insidious bill right now that is being considered in the House of Representatives called the SAFE Act. The SAFE Act is really about fear. It's about fear of the other. It basically takes Senate Bill 1070, the Arizona law, some of its worst principles, and makes them national law. And there is a concern right now that a pathway to citizenship is going to be traded with the SAFE Act. We'll give you a pathway to citizenship if you take the SAFE Act. What the SAFE Act will do is accelerate the splitting apart of families. That's what it will do. So this is a critical moment. One of my other hats is I'm a civil rights historian, so lots of conversation about King over the past week or two with the 50th anniversary of the March on Washington. But the story I'm remembering right now is from September of 1956. You may remember that the Montgomery bus boycott started in December of 1955 with Rosa Parks and Joanne Robinson. They started with a one-day boycott. Then they decided to make it a longer boycott, but they thought it would be over a week, or 2 weeks, or maybe 4 weeks. Then it became 8 weeks, then it became months. And at the end of that summer of 1956, they were tired. And for those who are affected by a broken immigration system, there are a lot of very tired people. We may not be walking, and undocumented immigrants may not be walking to work every day like the people in Montgomery did, but frankly, some are, because of all the challenges facing immigrants. Some have been fighting this for decades. There was hope in 2006 and 2007 as millions of people filled the streets calling for immigration reform. There was, by the way, probably going to be immigration reform in 2001, if not for 9/11. Fear derailed it. And there was a big attempt in 2010, and the DREAM Act came this close to passing in the Senate. It passed the House of Representatives for undocumented youth. But many of us have been in this struggle for the past 9 or 10 months, and many longer. And King was speaking to Dexter Avenue Baptist Church's congregation, and near the end of a sermon called Living Under the Tension of Modern Life, he said, people, and this is a bit of a paraphrase, but he basically said, people all over the country keep asking, how do you keep walking in Montgomery? How do you keep going? And his response was, because we know that when we walk, God walks with us. God knows all about your pain, the pain of the undocumented, those 11 million and many more affected. And as we walk on, God walks